Following the shooting of the two National Guard soldiers in the district, President Trump is calling for a halt to immigration from what he calls third world countries. This comes as the suspected shooter was identified as an Afghan national who was granted asylum by the Trump administration in April. Citizenship and Immigration Services has already paused the processing of immigration requests from Afghans, with more countries soon expected to be on the list.
Joining us now to talk more about this move from the Trump administration is our legal guru, Zach Schoenfeld. So, Zach, can the Trump administration actually ban immigration from whatever country it chooses?
Hey, Drew and Hillary. The short answer is it depends. The president does have authority in some of these areas to make changes to the country's immigration authorities. Federal law at various points, provides the president that authority. And, the courts have said that if nothing else, he's owed great deference in some of those decision making. But at this point, the president really has been talking about these new policy changes in broad strokes, saying he's going to cut off migration from all third world countries, not even necessarily specifying what those countries are. So at this point, we're waiting to see some of the fine print, and that's where some of the "it depends" comes into play. So it's certainly possible that he could make some of these massive changes to immigration, whether it be from Afghanistan or these other countries that he is talking about. But depending on how he goes about it, of course, it could always spark legal challenges. For example, if you go back to the president's first term when he had implemented a travel ban, that had come under legal challenges. Some of those plaintiffs were arguing at the time that it amounted to religious animus that violated the First Amendment. So it's always possible you see legal challenges in that sort of vein, but it is quite possible that depending on what the president does, that the federal immigration laws allow him to do it.
So Customs Director Joseph Edlow, he says they're re-examining green cards from 19 countries, Zach. What rights do green card holders have, and is this an unusual move?
They do have some protections. There is some procedure here that the Trump administration would have to follow, but having a green card is not synonymous to actually having full U.S. citizenship. There are circumstances in which the federal government can actually revoke someone's green card. Now, normally, this does happen, but normally we're not talking about, an entire country. Normally, we're talking about an individual by individual basis. For example, if a green card holder commits a serious crime, that is one of the common reasons in which you would see the government perhaps revoke that person's green card. We've also seen this come up in the context of certain college students who have been involved in pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Earlier in the president's term, the administration has attempted to revoke their green cards. In those cases, the administration has pointed to a provision that allows them to do so when a person who is a green card holder presents serious adverse foreign policy consequences to the U.S. So it's always possible that the administration tries to rely on that same legal authority here. But whichever way they go, eventually it would have to be up to an immigration judge. That is the person who would hold the keys to revoking any actual person's green card holder who already has one. But it is possible that the Trump administration is able to do so.
Zach, obviously what happened to these West Virginia National Guard troops is a terrible tragedy, but it is true that a judge this month had ruled that it was illegal to have those National Guard troops deployed here in D.C. Is there any update on the lawsuit that was, seeking to have those National Guard troops not be in the city anymore?
There is. After that ruling that you mentioned, Drew, where this deployment had been declared illegal by a federal judge, but also, I noted the key caveat there that ruling was put on hold for several weeks, so it has not gone into effect quite yet. That's why those troops were still on the streets of Washington, D.C. But in terms of where the case is at now, this is now quickly moving on appeal. The Trump administration, just before Thanksgiving, appealed this to the D.C. Circuit, the top federal appeals court here in the nation's capital. And they have asked the appeals court to step in and immediately block that judge's order as the appeal moves forward. The appeals court has set a very fast schedule. D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwalb is due to submit his response in writing by 5 p.m. today. The Justice Department will get to submit one more brief tomorrow. And then after that one comes in, we could get a ruling from the appeals court at any time. So it is potential that by the end of the week, we see some action from the appeals court.
So, Zach, the president talked about sending another 500 National Guard troops into the district. Is that all sort of on hold until these court decisions come down? How's that going to work?
As of right now, there is no order that, today would block any troops or any additional troops from coming in because that judge's order doesn't take effect for about another week or so. If the president wants to send in those 500 additional troops, Hillary, he could right now. But in terms of whether he can do so past next week, that is really going to be up to what happens in this legal battle over the next few days. So the short answer is he can for now, but in terms of the long term, that is still very much an open question depending on what these judges do.
All righty, Zach, thanks so much. We'll talk to you later. Hey, by the way, a new edition of The Gavel drops tomorrow at 8 a.m., and you can read that and all of Zach's reporting at thehill.com. Coming up on Sunrise at 8, Zach will be back in studio to talk more about all these cases.